Hi, everybody. This is Miss Jolly, and today we're going to be talking about narrative structure. You guys have been working the past few weeks on writing your personal narrative essay, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we can structure that essay. If it's already structured in a certain way and you want to go back and restructure it, and some of the options that you guys can have when it comes to that. And a lot of times when we start writing, we just get everything down, right? Anne Lamott talks about the downdraft. That's when you first start writing a project and you just get it all out. And you guys have worked previously on transition sentences and also on ways to hook in your audience. Another way that you can appeal to your audience is going to be the way in which you tell your story. So we're going to discuss how the structure, the foundation of your narrative enables you to do the best writing and storytelling possible. We're first going to talk about how you can structure your narrative, what options you have or may want to employ, and how through editing this document you can potentially change and improve your structure. Afterwards, I will have you guys do an activity where you're going to be thinking about this lesson, reflecting on your own narrative, going back, reading back through it, and seeing if there's anything missing from your structure. And if you want to potentially go back and kind of rearrange some things. I once had a professor who took her entire master's thesis apart, sentence by sentence, literally cut it into pieces and spread it out on the floor and rearranged it until she was happy with it. I am not asking you to do this. That I imagine is madness, but this is part of the writing process. But there are a few options when it comes to your narrative structure. Whenever you were writing, you might have had different parts of your story pop into your head at different times, and that's what made sense to you. But we do need to keep our audience in mind because what makes sense in our brains does not necessarily make sense on the page to a stranger or to your teacher or your classmates or anybody else who could potentially be reading this narrative one day. When you're telling about your personal life or a personal story, different elements of your narrative may connect to you in different ways. So it's important that you structure your story in a way that it flows and it's understandable, not just to you, but to whoever is reading your story. However, please keep in mind that it is you who actually chooses, well, in this instance, how you are telling your story. Now, first of all, there's always the chronological option, right? This is where we just write our story in order of when things happened. So if I'm telling a story about from the time I was born until the current time, I would start on January 20th, 1990, and go forward into the present day and not go back and forth or anything like that. This can be easier to some people. It will definitely make sense to your audience, but it might not serve you creatively. When we are writing a narrative or writing a story, we want it to be read in a way that connects to an audience. So chronologically might not work for you. And if that's how you write your paper and how you're happy with it, that's great. But there are other ways that we can write our stories. So, for instance, a common writing trope is called in medias res, which means in the middle of things or in the middle of the story. This might be an option for your narrative. You can tell the audience about the pivotal or most climactic part of your story that changed your life or your life as you knew it. And then you go back from there to you go on and describe the outcomes, or you can go back and kind of give a flashback and show how things all came to this pivotal point in your story. We have all watched movies or TV shows or read novels where there are flashback scenes, right? So these flashbacks provide us with some exposition that the creator or the author chose to wait until the right moment to reveal to the audience. Doing something like this could allow you to show a little flair or allow different thematic connections that would not be possible through a chronological approach to your narrative. So if your story is all about change and the way things have changed your life, be it family life, personal life, through your extracurricular sports or anything like that, those are going to be different themes that you can go back and forth on. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in chronological order. We know that there are stories that have prologues and epilogues. So telling us before what things were like before the important part of the story happened and what things happened after. Those are always options. But if you're not going to be taking, even if you are taking the chronological approach, I should say, but especially if you are not taking the chronological approach, the most important thing is that your story flows. And this is accomplished most of the time through transition phrases or sentences. For example, if I am telling you how I became a teacher at Alabama A&M University, I might start with how I became an English major in undergrad. To move on from that paragraph, I would not just finish up my undergrad experience and state, at UAH, I studied American and British literature. I would let my audience know that we are moving not only chronologically, but also geographically in the story. A better way to say this could be, after completing my undergraduate degree, I decided I want to go to grad school and carry on with the story from there. Transitions do not have to be chronological, though. For instance, I might start my story with my first day of teaching at A&M. And if I want to do a flashback to provide how I got there, I would need to signal that to my audience. So I could write about my first day of class at A&M, say how it reminded me of my first day of English class as I was a freshman in college, and move on from there. That way, I'm tying these two events together and not abruptly taking my audience 16 years back into time without any warning. Although we may think of structuring our essays as the beginning of our project, it's not too late to change things up towards the end. The editing process, a lot of times we think of it as just going through and looking at our grammar, maybe switching a couple of words around a little bit, a few sentences, maybe adding something to one paragraph or to another. But the editing process is not just about that. It's also about the content, and it enables us to really see our narrative and how it is telling the audience what we want to say. So this is an opportunity for you to change the structure as well. There are some writers like my professor that I had mentioned earlier who see papers as puzzles. So everything fits into an exact place to go. However, there are some writers who maybe see their work as a mosaic. So when we have something like a mosaic, we might not have exact pieces that we immediately see fitting together, but we're able to bond them with some sort of medium together to create the bigger picture. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. This, even though it might align chronologically minded to think of it as a puzzle with the mosaic, you're creating a bigger picture with how you see things fitting together. And this, of course, is where the editing process can come in. For instance, the structure of your paper may also affect the length of your paragraphs. When we look at a balanced 5-paragraph essay, sometimes there are parts of the story which take longer to explain than others. This is all depending on your teacher's requirements and also what the assignment is calling for. You may have to go through to make things more even and more concise, and take some stuff out. And this does not mean that you have to eliminate things from your story altogether. Sometimes you can even use this as a way to make your story and your sentences more understandable. There are writers such as William Faulkner, who has the Guinness Book of World Records for writing the world's longest run-on sentence. While there are composition people who everything is very concise and clean. And while people like Faulkner are still popular and read to this day, I would not have wanted to grade any of his composition essays in college. That sentence, by the way, was over 1,200 words. In academic writing, brevity can be your friend. When we are drafting, we sometimes take a few sentences to come around and come out to say something that could have easily been said in one sentence. The editing process can help you with this and with your structure. If you read a sentence out loud and it seems like you're taking a long time to get to a point, that might be your sign to make it more clear and concise. You can still have details and complicated sentence structure and great descriptions of things, but it should be in service to your storytelling, not because you're trying to reach a minimum word limit on your paper. For other professors, your paragraph lengths may not matter. As long as you have told your story fully and met the requirements of the essay, then that should suffice. But it's always good to check in with your professor on these matters and know that this can differ depending on what type of assignment you are writing. Now, we've discussed a few different options of how you guys can tell your story, and I want you guys to do some reflection and respond to these things. I have posted on the course shell for the hybrid assignment of the day that I want you to go back and I want you to really read your narrative as it stands right now all the way through. This might entail reading it aloud as well to just catch everything. Go back, read your narrative, and follow the prompts that I have given you. And if you have any questions, you are always feel free to shoot me an email or come see me during office hours. Thank you guys.